We don't understand it, how they can not use condoms and they sleep with both or 2 or 3 of them without a condom. After 20 years of working here, I still cannot explain why they take that kind of risk.
Meet Palle Bo, a digital nomad from Denmark on an epic journey around the world.
Welcome to the second half of my visit to an orphanage in Cape Town. If you haven't heard the first half, you should go back and listen to that one first. And then you will know that Florian Kramer, the CEO and founder of this place called Vuolemasango, is so passionate about caring for these kids. He goes out of his way to do what's right. He tells me about a specific girl in the orphanage and how far he went in her case. Her mother was deeply alcoholic.
So sometimes I take this woman like drunk as hell. I drag her out of her shack, I put her in my car, I drive her to the police station at 9 o'clock in the evening, I hold her against the counter to sign documents for me and she doesn't even know what she signed, that kind of thing. In the end I got so tired of it that I actually adopted that young girl personally. She's living here in the orphanage, but I did a personal Pflegeschaft. She's my Pflegekind, my foster child, because then I can sign the documents for her and so on. So I wanted to take her to Brazil now in last year, and so then I did that just for her last year of her life, just to make it easier. But we have problems with these parents with the documents and stuff like that because they just don't care.
In this episode, we'll take a walk around the area and get to hear some more mind-blowing South African statistics. And Florian tells me how he was hijacked and nearly killed in a township at some point.
I was hijacked. They stopped me at an intersection in Gugulethu in a township and they put a gun to my head and then they tried to press me into the back seat, which means they take you with and shoot you somewhere.
And then, at the end of this episode, I will check in with Florian again here in March 2020 to hear how they are coping with the coronavirus in Vuolemasango and hear Florian's thoughts on the corona situation in the townships. My name is Palle Bo. Welcome to the Radio Vagabond. This is where I normally would tell you that you can use hotels25.com when you're traveling. Obviously, if you're listening now during the corona outbreak, you should stay at home. But you can close your eyes and fantasize of a time that is coming when you're able to travel again. Move around the world a bit more than just slipping into the local supermarket. And then see yourself getting a super cool deal on a place to stay, because that is what hotels25.com does. If you're listening at a later date, and I know that a lot of people do, what are you waiting for? Get out there and start by going to hotels25.com.
This is the Radio Vagabond podcast.
Okay, we're back in the orphanage in Cape Town. We're walking around the area, seeing where and how the kids live. It looks nice, clean, and safe for the children.
So this is the girls' house now, and like I said, there can always be 12 children in one house. And in the evening they eat here together and so on. This is their living room, and then we've got the bathrooms here and the bedrooms. Here's the little ones, the little girls, they're like between 4, 5 and 9, 6, 9, so that age. And then the house mother here at the back. So she is only here in the evenings because obviously during school time at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning, the kids leave. They take our shuttle to the township and from there they either go to township schools or they go to town, take a bus to town and go to school there. And then in the afternoon they come home after school and then they go straight to the hall. So we've got the afternoon programs and then only in the evening they come back. So the house mothers during the day are in the townships, they're at home, and at night they sleep here. This is the house mother's room. And upstairs we've got the youth, the older ones, staying with the volunteers. Her daughter is one of our volunteers.
If the young people of South Africa get good grades, they can get their university education funded by the government. And now we come to the adult house for the young adults in university, the young adults that used to live here when they were kids. Now it's a place they can stay in their holidays. All the time as we were walking, Florian was talking, and at some point he forgot that I'm not German.
Und bei den Waisenkindern ist es eben so, oh sorry, I'm talking German, right, so the orphans that we have, their only chance to make it out into the real world and not be a burden on us financially anymore is if they manage to get a good matric result, the Abitur, right, the grade 12. If they get a good result, the government pays everything. They pay a monthly food stipend, they pay the university residence, Studentenwohnheim, they pay a laptop and everything. So they sorted for their studies, they pay the university fees and everything. So if they get a good grade in grade 12, then they've got a way out and they're fully financed. But they cannot stay in the student accommodation during the holidays, during the Semesterferien, meaning they have to have a place where they come back. So this house is now called our independent living, where the adults come back in the holidays and they cook for themselves, they look after themselves, they're free to go in and out, they don't have a house mother anymore and so on, but they live here independently until they finish university. So that's our adult house there, the independent living house.
In the beginning, we're talking about how big and cramped the township Khayelitsha is and how fast it's growing. Again, we're back in the office, looking at the aerial photo hanging on the wall.
This one here is a formal township started by the government, basically. You've got schools here, you can see they've got roads, they've got electricity, sewage and so on. And then they build the shacks in between. This one is an illegal township, which you can see on this map up here. And these shacks started here in this corner in 2012 in March. They started here, and then 2 months later we came back from Europe and this entire township had started. And you can see here there's no roads, no sewage, no electricity, no nothing.
What was on that land before?
Nothing. You can see these farms are very cultivated on this side, and this strip of land here wasn't cultivated. It belonged to some German, but he didn't, you can see it was lying dormant, vacant. So he was in Europe, he didn't look after the land, they took it, he's never going to get it back. That's how it is. But you can see how devastating the circumstances are here. They've got no sewage, no electricity, thousands of people go into the bushes and so on. Then you can see here the government put up water collection points, taps and so on along the road. You can see here these hundreds of Dixie toilets, those little plastic toilets that they put up there to contain the situation. But I mean, this is desperately poor and not structured. So this is an illegal township, and this is now only 200 meters away from our farm. You can see this is our plot here. So we work mainly with this township. Most of our children are from here. We now have a few that come out of this squatter camp here, and then I get the cases from the police where they call me, and then I work in all the townships of Cape Town. I get children from everywhere now.
The accommodation in some of the townships are really bad. Basically shacks. Most of them are made out of tin. I've been to a few of them. They live so close to each other here. There's trash everywhere, and it smells. And it's not a place I'd like to be in the middle of the night. It's just not safe. It's a bit different with Soweto in Johannesburg and the township called Langa here in Cape Town.
Yes, Langa is the first township in Cape Town. It started in the 50s. It started when the government started bringing... There were no black people here in the Cape, right? The black people are from Eastern Cape, about 1,500 kilometers north. So they brought black workers here for the factories and so on in the 50s. So the first, Langa was the first township that started as a male hostel only. Only males were allowed to come to Cape Town. After that, of course, came prostitution and so on. That started disrupting the families because the workers always had to come here and only the males. So the townships in Cape Town are not very old. 50s and 60s was Nyanga and Langa, and then later came the others. Khayelitsha, for example, here with 1.6 million people, was only started in the 80s, I think in 1984. So it's very, very late. And there's a difference between a township, which is a suburb that was set up by the government for the black people during apartheid. So they said white people live here, colored people live there, and the black people live in the allocated townships that we set up for them. But those ones had streets and so on, like Nyanga and Langa and so on, and they have what they call the RDP houses, the government subsidized social houses. They're proper brick houses, small and for free for the people. And then these areas here we call squatter camps. They're not a township, they're squatter camps where people literally squat on someone's land and they cannot be removed anymore. And those obviously have very different standards to the actual townships. If you go to Soweto, for example, Soweto used to be a township in Johannesburg, the biggest one in South Africa.
Yeah, where Mandela came from.
Exactly. And if you go to Soweto now, it's not a township anymore, it's a suburb. You can walk around in the streets as a white person, you can sit in a cafe outside on the street. It's got Mercedes and BMWs, nice gardens, double-story houses. People really turned it into a suburb. They developed it, whereas here in Cape Town that hasn't happened yet. So there's differences between townships and townships. And
In a future episode I will visit Langa. According to Florian, South Africa has some shocking statistics.
Yeah, well, I mean, we have the highest rate of HIV in the world, the highest rate of rape, and recently we had the highest rate of crime as well, of murder. I think Mexico is now overtaking us because of the cocaine war. But, rape, we are still the highest. HIV, we are definitely the highest. We are always in first or second place in terms of sheer numbers. India has about 5.5 million. We have about 5.5 million. But India has 1.3 billion people. So in terms of percentage, it's much, much smaller. Botswana, for example, has 36% HIV rate in the country, but they only have 1 million people in the whole country, so it's only 300,000, whereas we have 5.5 million. So in terms of sheer numbers, it's the highest. For a long time, the government didn't do much about the AIDS problem. Under the Zuma regime, they did.
He took a shower.
Yeah, he took a shower.
It was, maybe we should just tell the listeners that because it is so ridiculous. He was talking about it, correct me if I'm wrong, he was talking about having unprotected sex.
Actually with an HIV activist who was knowingly HIV positive, so he knew that, and so that in that sense it's even worse.
And then he said, I took a shower after, and what a role model that is, and what that helps, what that does to the people that maybe trust him and look up to him. It is just so ridiculous.
True, it is. I mean, he also has 4 wives and I don't know how many children, so in terms of role model, I don't want to speak too much, but at the time when he was saying this thing about the shower and so on, he was not only the president of South Africa, he was actually also the president of the South African AIDS Commission, and that makes it even worse. You can't just say such a statement. But I do have to commend the Zuma regime on actually working on the HIV problem in South Africa. The previous administration almost denied it and said it's not happening, or and whereas Zuma did acknowledge it, and he was the first to provide ARVs and free medication for HIV positive people for everyone in the country, and that was a huge step. So a lot of things went wrong in his administration, but that I can really applaud, because I saw the difference of what medication does. We have HIV positive children here that live with us in the orphanage, and they are healthy because they are now getting that medication. Another point what the government did is that they provide free medication for pregnant mothers who are HIV positive, and that medication, I think the chances of getting the virus from the mother is only reduced to about 5% or something. The chance is very high that the child's not going to get it, but most parents don't take those pills. That's why we have HIV positive children, because the mothers could have taken the medication but they just didn't.
Another statistic is that South Africa has a very high teenage pregnancy rate. And it shouldn't be that way, because condoms are available for free everywhere. Not only would this prevent the many teenage mothers, but it would also help with the huge AIDS problem. But they simply don't use them. And this is something Florian just doesn't understand. not even after so many years here.
To be honest, I can't answer it. Condoms are free. You can get them everywhere and anywhere. The government is providing that. The kids get sex education in school. They get it in the project. I don't understand why they choose not to. They always have this cultural excuse that it's, a cultural thing. But everyone sees everyone around them dying of HIV. Everyone has a family member, close family member who has died or who's dying. So I don't understand how they cannot take that serious, but they just don't use it. And at first I thought it has to do with education and so on, but I know women at university, they're at university level and they're educated, they're intelligent and whatever, and they also don't use condoms. And all of them have more than one boyfriend, and the guys have more than one girlfriend, and everyone sleeps with everyone. Everyone sleeps with everyone without a condoms.
And it's not anything religious, it's just...
No, I mean, they're Christian.
Mind-boggling.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling. It really is like that. I mean, my life partner is African, she's black, and she has a lot of friends, and, we talk to them as well, and we don't understand it, how they can not use condoms, and at the same time they have more than one boyfriend, and they sleep with both or two or three of them without a condom, and it's just so normal, and I really can't explain it. I cannot. After 20 years of working here, I still cannot explain why they take that kind of risk.
And speaking of the high teenage pregnancy rate, the place is called Vullamasango, and that means open gates, but Florian has 2 very strict rules for the kids to follow.
Yeah, for the after-school care, we have the main rule is that they have to come every day. That's very important. They have to attend every program, not just when they're hungry and so on. They don't pay anything here, so they get all their education and programs and everything for free. So we ask that they attend regularly. We have long waiting lists of children that want to join, so we only give them to the kids that really are motivated and committed. And the second rule is not to fall pregnant. That is my number one rule, because there is no excuse for falling pregnant. There is condoms, there is prevention. You can even go to a clinic and get injections and so on, everything for free, provided by the government. So there is no need to fall pregnant. And the girls here fall pregnant at 13, 14, 15 years of age. And I have experienced, my opinion, why South Africa is still poor is because of teenage pregnancy rates. That they have children too young and too many, and they can't look after them. They're not mothers yet at that age. And if you go to university here, you will see young black students who are successful. The only difference between them and most people in the townships is that they didn't have children before they were 20 or 22 or whatever. That is the major difference. So for me, that seems to be the explanation of poverty, is the children, and that we have too many at too young ages. So that's my number one rule. They are not allowed to fall pregnant. Then I will kick them out of the after-school care.
And you've had to do that?
I have had to do that already twice now. Both times it was a 13-year-old girl who got pregnant.
Vullamasango is aided by the German fundraising entity Positiv Leben.
We have a fundraising organization in Germany registered according to German law. We can issue German tax receipts and so on. Unfortunately, I think they're not accepted all over Europe. I think if I issue a German tax receipt, it's not valid in Denmark, for example. I'm not sure. But anyway, donations, of course, can be made from anywhere. Either they can go directly to our South African bank account, to Vullamasango directly from anywhere in the world, or they go to the German bank account, which is easier for Europeans, and all the money that goes to that organization in Germany, to Living Positive, that's what it's called, goes to our project Vullamasango. So obviously people can do a once-off donation, which is always nice, but the best thing we're looking for is members, that people that give 5 euros or 10 euros or 15 euros a month. It's a small amount, but it's regular and we can rely on it, and that helps us to finance operating costs, because the big companies, the corporate world, they pay for cars and infrastructure and buildings and so on, or a soccer pitch, but they won't pay for running costs, for therapy, for school fees, for school uniforms, for food, electricity, all of that. That needs to be paid, and that is paid basically only by those small amount members that pay regularly, you know.
I will make sure to put the links and instructions on in the show notes of this podcast and on the website. So please go and have a look at that if you want to support this amazing project.
Imagine how many lives he and his team has changed. Think of what they've done, and they still do. And I was wondering how he gets the energy to do what he does.
I'm surrounded by youth all the time. I've never been married. I've been doing this now for 15 years. And the kids have so much joy and fun and spirit, and they keep me young. I now have a life partner, and she also wants her own children, so maybe I will have my own as well. But yeah, I've always managed to keep young. And,
but this is, I can feel deep in my bones that this is a calling for you.
Yeah, it is. I mean, this experience in Congo really shaped me back then. I was 19 and very naive, and it really set me on a path, and it also set me on a path that I can't turn back on, because like in 2005, for example, still in the old project, I was hijacked. They stopped me at an intersection in Guguletu in a township, and they put a gun to my head, and then they tried to press me into the back seat, which means they take you with and shoot you somewhere. And I managed to fight at the last moment, and I ran away, and they didn't shoot quick enough, and they took my car and my laptop and everything, but I survived. I ran into the shacks. And then when I came home that evening, when the police brought me home, I phoned my father, and I was under shock and I was crying and so on. And my father said, okay, so it's enough now, you're coming home, right? And I said immediately, no ways. And, this was still under shock. This was 2 hours, 3 hours after I'd been hijacked and almost killed. And it came out from so deep within me. I said, no ways am I going to give up. So I think that path back then that I was set on, there's no way back. I feel that if I should have died in Congo. And, there have been plenty of chances. So someone is keeping me alive. And I just do what I love doing, and a lot of people ask me if it's not very hard, and it is emotional. I do have my breakdowns, I do have my burnouts, but I get a lot of positive feedback from these kids, and when you see them here and how they hug me and greet me and call me Daflo, which means Father Flo, it gives you energy, it gives you the what you need to carry on, I think.
As mentioned, this was recorded before the corona outbreak. And if you're like me, you're probably thinking about what's going on right now in Khayelitsha, the squatter camp next to the orphanage, and the other townships in Cape Town. And what about the orphanage itself? Is it still running as usual? I heard an expert this morning say that 60 to 70% of the entire population of South Africa will get the virus at some point. And I'm thinking that it would be next to impossible to prevent it from spreading like a wildfire in the poor townships. They live so many people so close. They can't isolate. And if they see their children hungry, they probably won't care when the government tells them to stay inside. They have to go out and try to make some money. All this is something I would like to talk to Florian about. So I've reached out to him, and in a minute I'll get him on the line. Actually, we did agree to meet on a street corner and go find a quiet place outside, keeping at least 2-3 meters apart. I even had a special setup prepared where I wouldn't have to use my normal microphone. I had a separate recorder with a brand new, untouched clip-on microphone for him and one for me as well, so we would be able to do it 3 meters apart. But then we agreed that this is not a reason for any of us to go outside. Instead, we'll use WhatsApp, and that's in a few seconds when the program continues. My name is Palle Bo. Stay with us.
If you're one of those people that have shared this podcast on social media, or maybe just told a friend out there in real life, I just want to say thank you so much. That means so much to me.
And now, back to the show. Okay, Florian, thank you so much for taking the time. I know that you're super busy right now with all the things that are going on just before the lockdown. And you're at home and I'm at home, and we're doing this over WhatsApp. So, Florian, thank you so much for taking the time for this.
Yes, hi, Palle. It's nice that you're back in Cape Town. It's really unfortunate that we can't meet, but under these circumstances at the moment, that's unfortunately impossible.
Absolutely.
But glad to hear that you are back, and of course I'll take some time to talk to you today.
Right now we're very close to each other, but you told me that you still need to go back to the orphanage around 25-30 kilometers away from Cape Town, where we both are right now, or the city, the downtown area of Cape Town. I know that the orphanage is in Cape Town as well. You taught me that lesson. But we're about to go into a lockdown. Can you tell me what this means for the orphanage right now? Well, since the last time we met, quite a few things have happened. Most importantly, we finally got our full government registration. We are fully registered as a child and youth care center now, which means that we are now also fully supported by the government, and that means, of course, in a time of crisis like this, we get very strict government regulations and orders what to do and what not to do, and we just have to make sure we follow those. Yeah. But luckily, because of course, me being German, I was in touch with Germany for the past few months, and while everyone here was still taking this very, very lightly and making fun of it, and people were dancing, there's even a Corona song that was going around in the shebeens and in the drinking halls in the townships where everyone was dancing to the Corona song. So people were taking it very lightly, and me being in touch with not only my family but also with all the concert organizers, because I was organizing the European concert tour with our youth that we do every 2 years, and we were going to travel through 14 countries in Europe together. And of course, I heard about all the status quos in Italy and Germany and so on. So I put in place a lot of the legislation in our home before the government actually told me to do so. We bought food for 2 months for the 36 children that live with us, and we did that already about 3 weeks ago, I think, way before the first presidential address and before everyone was even talking about Corona in South Africa. So I made sure we have enough provisions, food for 36 children for 2 months, sanitizers, of course, and whatever we needed to buy. And we had management meetings and we put everything in place, and we shut down the after-school care. We shut it down also 5 days before the government actually told us to then shut it down. The after-school care is an external activity where children come every day and they go home again in the evening, and they come for educational and music and sports activities and so on. So that we had to suspend. Every external contact to anyone on the outside we had to suspend. So we are going into lockdown now. The children are not, of course, they're not going to school. All the holiday visits were cancelled. The children usually go to host families and to foster families and so on for weekends and for holidays, and they're not allowed to do that anymore. Then our staff, we have 36 full-time staff, and we divided it into 2 groups. The one group being the non-essential staff, which was cleaners and cooks and gardeners and maintenance and so on. They are not working. They are at home on full pay. I also did that a week before now the president said that that's what we should do, or are encouraged to do, to let our people be at home on full pay. We are doing that. And then the ones who are essential staff, which are the house mothers, childcare workers, the creche teacher, the laundry lady, the security,
day and night security, and the drivers. They are unfortunately essential staff, so they have to work, and we're paying them 1.5 times their wages, so we at least try and compensate them in that way, that they have to actually work. We no longer do shift changes every day. We do shift changes only once a week. So the house mothers work 12-hour shifts either during the day or at night, and the other 12 hours they are off but are not allowed to leave the farm. So they have to stay with us for one entire week, and then on Monday morning the changeover for the new shift, drivers and securities and everyone coming in, and of course everyone properly being sanitized and so on. So yeah, it's a challenge for us, but I think we can do this. We were very well prepared. Of course, I had to cancel the European concert tour, and I cancelled it before even there was a travel ban. So I even saw that coming, and it's just, me being in touch with Germany was a great help to actually avoid the biggest risks that everyone is now running into. So we are trying our best to handle the situation, and our management works mostly from home. We have laptops and so on, so we can. But some of my management do come in for once a week or twice a week for emergencies or meetings, to guide the whole process. And of course, I also go in, occasionally when I'm needed, or to show courage and team spirit and so on. But of course, I try and minimize that as much as I can. And should we have a suspected case in the organization, we then, of course, are going to be locked down by the government completely, and they will send the Department of Health and sort everything out and help us through this. So, as long as we don't have any suspected cases, we can still go in and out. But of course, we are staying home as much as we can, like everyone else is doing right now. So yeah, that's our way to get through this.
So if I understand you correctly, the 36 children that you have in Wullamasanga, they don't go in and out. They're there all the time, so they don't go to the townships and potentially bring any virus back.
Yes, you are correct. The children do not go in and out of the organization anymore. Absolutely not. I mean, the schools are now closed down. The little ones, we don't call it an orphanage anymore, actually. The orphanage is actually politically incorrect nowadays. We call it a children's home, or in professional terms in South Africa, we are a child and youth care center. That's what it's called, because a lot of the children or youth that we have are not actually orphans, but have parents, but just come from very, very bad circumstances. That just as a note of explanation. So the children that we have, the residential children that we have, the 36, they don't leave the farm at all. The younger ones normally don't leave anyway, because we have an internal creche. We have about 10 that are in the ages of 2 or 1 to 6 years old. They don't leave the farm anyway. So that internal creche during the day, that still runs, or a kindergarten, you call it a kindergarten, childcare, that runs. Our creche teacher comes in every day, but she doesn't use public transport anymore. We have a designated driver who fetches her in the township, and then she goes through sanitation when she arrives, and then so she's the only one that actually goes in and out of the organization on a daily basis, but she comes for the creche. And then everyone else, the 36 children, they stay. The youth don't go in and out anymore, and we have people who run programs with them every day. We specially hired people now for this lockdown situation, and the people that we hired are actually our alumni. They are all the youth that finished the matric, their school last year, their high school. So they are now at college and universities and so on. And of course, they're also not going to colleges or universities at the moment. So we hired them to stay at the farm. They also do weekly shifts, and every day they have games and activities with the youth and the children, so that they don't have to leave the farm. The reason why we had to hire people to run those activities in the afternoons for our children now, why we had to hire our alumni, was because the German government, of course, last week decided to withdraw our 6 German volunteers with immediate effect. They usually stay with us for 1 year, and they were only halfway through their service. The changeover is in September, on the 1st of September every year. So these volunteers were very much shocked when the government decided that they were going to send them home. And there was nothing that we could do about it. We were completely helpless in that situation, and they were withdrawn within 1 week. They had to book their flights and pack their stuff and leave. And we were left with no one. And these German volunteers are absolutely crucial in our operations every day. They help in everything from driving and kids to school and fetching them, to working with the children, to running programs in the afternoons, to helping in the orphanage, in the children's home itself. They really are a crucial part of our operations. So when they were sent home this week, it was devastating for us. And but we had our alumni who we hired, so that was a great relief. Our former children are helping us with that. They're a great help.
Also, I know that a lot of them are HIV positive. What do you do with the medical situation?
Yes, some of our children are HIV positive, our children and youth, and we get medication from the government, from the hospitals. Obviously, we get those ARVs, the antiretrovirals. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, that's a system where you have to go for your appointments, and those appointments are set months in advance. They are regular appointments. That's why we have a designated house mother every day who just goes to clinics normally with the kids. We now try to pool some of these appointments together and get longer-term ARVs for our children, so that we don't have to go to these hospital appointments so much, because obviously that's a risk then. We were looking into whether we have to always bring the children. Normally we do, for identification and so on, because obviously there might be scams and fraud going on with these medications and so on. We are trying to send the house mothers and not the children. And so we're taking every measure that we can to avoid going in and out of the farm, and to get long-term supplies of the medication that we need for the children to keep them safe.
Yeah. Something that's been very much on my mind, because we spoke a lot about the townships and the squatter camp, and how people live there in very cramped shacks. I'd like to hear your thoughts on what will happen in the townships with 6 to 10 people living very close in small shacks, if the virus spreads even more?
Yeah, that's a tough question, and that's obviously also a politically sensitive question. You're quite right. There might be a higher risk in the townships. I can't really say that. I'm not a doctor, and I'm not an expert on these things. But yes, they're talking about social distancing and 1.8 meters. Now that's of course impossible. The houses in the townships and the shacks and where people live, they are full with people. So they're very close together, and I really don't know what that would do. On the other hand, I must say, as harsh as this sounds, but our reality in South Africa involves death on a daily basis, especially in our work. I mean, we have still on a regular basis have youth that get shot, youth from our organization or that were part of it in the past, and we've buried quite a few of them over the years. We have the gang violence going on still. We have relatives of our children getting shot on a regular basis, and we have HIV going on. We are the country in the world with the highest number of HIV cases. I've seen a lot of people pass away from that illness, friends and relatives of our children. About 3 weeks ago, I asked my team, my managers, to organize a taxi, like a minibus, for an outing for our house mothers. We wanted to go see an another organization. And for years we used a very reliable taxi owner who was the father of one of our kids in the after-school care. His son came to our programs every day for years now. And I sent my managers to go and get a quote from this man for this taxi trip, and she came back and she said he was shot last night. And it sounds crazy, but this is part of our lives. We then had to deal with his son, who was actually at the organization, and he didn't even know at the time when we heard it that his father had been shot. And we deal with death and with people passing away so much that I honestly don't know what the reaction will be of people. If it will be as hyped up as it is in Europe, I don't know. Or will people just take it as another hardship on their lives? I know this sounds very, very crazy in a way, but I've seen our youth. They handle situations that any European teenager would immediately break apart on, and they just handle it. One of our alumni, she's 19, 18, she just finished matric, and a week ago she was in a minibus taxi, and she was alone, and suddenly three men in there tried to rape her, and they robbed her. They took her phone and everything at gunpoint, and then they wanted to rape her, and those kind of things. The way she then tells me that story, these children, they are so strong. They are immensely able to just swallow these kind of things. I don't know how they do it, and of course everyone is traumatized in a way, but I'm just saying that people are used to taking hardship and taking it together as a society. They will help each other, they will comfort each other, be there for each other in that way, I hope. And so I really can't say what it will do in the townships, but you're right, it is of course a concern that it will spread faster in more dense areas.
I'm also thinking during the lockdown, when people are supposed to be staying at home, if a family in one of those townships, if they see their children being hungry, I can't imagine that they would respect the lockdown and stay home and not go out and try to make some money.
Yes, I mean, you're right. This is economically, this is really going to affect people, especially in the townships. I mean, I can just honestly hope that a lot of them work in service sectors that are still open. I mean, a lot of them work in grocery stores as tellers and cashiers and packers and whatever. So I would hope that most people can still go to work and earn money, or that the companies would actually pay them in full, even if they are at home. But of course, a huge part of the labor force is the casual labor force, and people will send them home and they will not pay them. Like the domestic workers, most people don't have a contract with them, so they might ask them to stay at home, and then they might not pay them. That really is then up to the goodwill of the people, of the individual families and businesses. I don't know if people are going to try and go out and make money. I don't know if there's even money to be made. I mean, the streets at the moment are really, really empty. It's like a ghost town here in the city. So I don't know who will still hire people and who will do anything. So but it's a tough question. Yes, economically this is going to hit people very, very hard. People don't have reserves, but the government, I mean, the State of the Nation address, or the government, the presidential address yesterday on TV, he said that there will be huge measures to help people, from tax incentives. We don't have to pay taxes for 6 months and so on, and there's a lot of measures that are being discussed to help the economically weaker segments of the society. So I'm just hoping that the government is going to pull through on that and make this a reality, because it's really, really needed.
Thank you so much. I'm so impressed with all the things that you do and the way that you're coping with the whole situation, and I my thoughts really go out to the people both at Wulamasango and in the township. I hope we get through this and well onto the other side. Just before I let you go, Florian, when we met, you were about to be married, and you mentioned at some point that you might have kids, and now it happened. You have a newborn son, right?
Yes, that is true. I finally got married now in December, actually. It was very, very beautiful. It was a big Zulu wedding in the project itself. The choir was there, the youth choir sang for us. It was absolutely stunning. And yes, in October last year, we had our first baby boy. He's 5 months old. For 20 years, I've been raising other people's children now. So now I finally had my own biological child, and I'm very, very happy in my life. So yes, that is very true. Thank you for that.
Thank you so much again, Florian, for taking me for a walk around and spending so much time with me that day in Wulamasanga, and also for taking the time, even in this crazy busy time. And all the best to you and your family, and I hope to see you soon when all of this is over. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And that is it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening to these 2 episodes about Wulamasango. That is not an orphanage like I've been calling it, not anymore. But then, I live and learn. On Friday, there will be another interview episode that was recorded before the corona outbreak. I met Matt Kepnes when I was in London in November. It's Nomadic Matt, and he just wrote a new book, and we're going to be talking about that. He's one of the most influential travel bloggers in the world, and that episode is coming out this Friday.
This is the Radio Vagabond podcast.
Stay inside. Avoid any social contact as much as you possibly can. Wash your hands, and for God's sake, stop hoarding toilet paper. My name is Palle Bo. Stay safe.